What was your could never be me but did indeed become you? Story 1. My mom always chats up waiters, waitresses, cashiers, etc. She will tell those people the most random of things, often on the edge of TMI, always unrelated to whatever is going on. You get the idea. I dislike it when I was a kid. Swore I'd never do that. The other day, my partner was like, "Boy, you sure do like telling waitresses stories about random things." Frick. Answer. There's something really discomforting but also endearing about taking on our parents' quirks. It used to annoy me so much when my mother would make public comments about high prices or poor behavior. But now I practically police the pavement outside my building to make sure no one parks on it and blocks the passage, and often discourage people to avoid overpriced places. Story 2. Enjoying running, lol. I always disliked just straight, pure running and always thought it was the most boring and needlessly torturous form of exercise. Was always more of a dance class or team sport sort of person at best. Then one day at an extremely poor point in my mental health, in what I can only describe as a botched form of self-harm, I told myself I was going to start exercising more, and it was going to be running because I didn't deserve anything actually enjoyable, lol. But turns out it's actually really nice when you do it right, which I hadn't been for my entire life. Who knew if you get your form down correctly, among a few other things like pacing yourself, it doesn't hurt like hell and feel impossible? Now I'm pretty much addicted. Runner's high, which I was absolutely sure was either a myth or something only mild to moderate sociopaths experienced, is real and fantastic. I 100 believe that humans evolved persistence, running animals to passing. Running hits a button in my brain that rarely ever got hit by other forms of exercise. Add in the fact that you can do it pretty much anywhere and it needs loads less gear than many other sports and forms of exercise. It's the boring adult brain form of hitting the jackpot, lol. So yeah, I'm one of those insufferable weirdos that likes running miles to nowhere now. LOL. Even 3 years ago or so, I would have been very confused or laughed in your face if you would have tried to tell me that was going to happen. Story 3. Substances addict, specifically fentanyl, which cost me everything, including my family. Then while clean, I turned into an alcoholic after not being able to sleep, which lasted for a year after starting drinking at 28 years old. Now 8 days sober a month before my 30th birthday, for probably the 5th time. Hoping this time stays true, added some details. Story 4. Alcoholic. I didn't start drinking until around 23 because I have a large family history of adult beverage abuse. I vowed to never be like them, and yet here I am. Recently relapsed after 1.5 years sober, but caught myself and back on the wagon. If anyone reading this is unsure about their relationship with adult beverage or knows they want to stop drinking, come check out a Stop Drinking, amazing sub filled with love and support. Story 5. Being a healthy weight, I grew up in a fat household. I thought there was no way I'd ever be skinny. I had a million excuses as to why it was impossible for me to lose weight. In my early 20s, I had an experience that made me think, if I can't lose weight now, I'll never do it. I took responsibility for myself, started exercising daily, and counting calories. I lost 75 pounds within a year and have stayed within a healthy weight range for the last decade. Story 6. Met the perfect man after a string of crappy relationships. We've been together for a little over a year. He's way out of my league. Stunning, smart, a great cook, great in bed, and for some reason wants to marry middle-aged, nothing special me. And no, he's not a serial killer. They're out there, ladies. Don't give up hope. Story 7. Always said I'd never let myself fall victim to being in an abusive relationship. I just left my year-long relationship almost 5 months ago. That was indeed physically, financially, and emotionally abusive. I used to think people who stayed were dumb and always thought that they should just leave until I became that girl and stayed with my ex-girlfriend every time she reeled me back in despite the abuse because I loved her and she was sorry. Story 8. Single mom. Married my high school sweetheart. Followed him literally around the world for his job. Married 17 years with 3 kids. Was devoted and in love. And was fully 100 without a doubt confident that he loved me. He divorced me via text message and left to another country the same day. Hasn't talked to me or our kids since. Answer. Not as extreme, but I get you. Moved across the world to be with my ex-husband. He's from the UK. I'm from Canada. 4 visas. 10 years, 1 kid. I was devoted and knew we'd be together forever. Immigration, job loss, financial problems, buying a house, miscarriage, infertility, a baby. We'd come through all of it together. I once remember thinking the only things we hadn't gone through were family deaths and health issues. One day he announces I have ruined his life and that he's leaving. That night he goes to his now girlfriend's house, who was, according to him, not an affair partner. 50-50 custody, but I never thought I'd be a single mom in a foreign country. It's been 3 years, and despite therapy, I still can't believe it. Also, he is now quite ill, to the point he's off work and in and out of AE with heart palpitations a couple of times a week. Curious to see if the girlfriend will stick around for the hard bit. Story 9. Having dogs being a dog person. I didn't grow up with pets, and it was instilled in me that it's nasty to have them in your home. I was one of those people that got dogs during COVID, and with these two, how could you not love them? So excited to see them every morning and after work. Love them so much. Story 10. Wearing leggings as pants. In my teens and 20s, I was judgmental about other women wearing leggings in place of jeans. They're not pants. Ugh! Now, in my 30s, I wear leggings almost daily. Comfy, stylish, kind of hide my no longer flat belly. Highly recommend. That's my happier answer. My sad answer is, I never thought I'd be disabled, especially so young. I just turned 33. I have so many physical and mental illnesses I can't function anymore. Type 1 diabetes, diabetic neuropathy, diabetic kidney disease, hypermobility syndrome, cervical dystonia, occipital neuralgia, fibromyalgia, schizoaffective bipolar disorder, PTSD, plus all the meds I have to take are a double-edged sword. Help with some symptoms, then give me horrible side effects in exchange. I used to love hiking, biking, camping, traveling. I can't do those things anymore. Answer, I'm down to one main physical impairment, my chronically injured spine, but non-physical illnesses are racking up. Got diagnosed with a neurological speech disorder at 36 and OCD at 37, while still dealing with especially treatment-resistant bipolar, 2 other anxiety disorders, social in general, epilepsy, particularly wacky ADHD, that I can't effectively treat. Most meds mess with one or both of bipolar and epilepsy, and likely more that I can't recall right now. I hear you. This sucks. I would love to just be med-free someday, but I know that can never happen. Story 11. I was raised in a cult. I was devout and going places. I was making my family and Lil Town proud with the accomplishments I'd made, being accepted to serve at headquarters. I realized I didn't believe it and left. Shocked all of us. I was so sure it wouldn't be me. Brainwashing from birth is very effective. Story 12. I was skinny as a little kid and then gained a lot of weight in high school and was huge. After getting done with school and living on my own, I lost maybe 100 pounds and was in amazing shape, and I was pretty convinced that is develop an eating disorder before I ever got fat again. Then the pandemic hit. I couldn't go to the gym or play the massive amounts of soccer I used to, so we set up a home gym and I bought a spin bike. But it turned out that those things were no match for massive amounts of takeout and work-from-home drinks. Story 13. I never thought I could be the person that let the universe handle people who hurt me. I felt such an urge for revenge, but time had its way with me, and I lost energy for such nonsense. Much more, the universe came through with some diabolical slap-downs for the evil ones that I could never have managed. Story 14. Becoming my dad. All the stuff I complained about I do. Drying out the kitchen sink with a sponge. It is a sink. It is supposed to be wet. I do this now. I get up out of bed to make sure the sink is dry. I put a stamper on my Xmas list so I can stamp open mail with date received and if further attention is needed. I don't even get a lot of paper mail, but I really want it. I always said I would never be like my Virgo type A, hyper-organized dad. But here we are. He has been dead 25 years. I wish he was alive. He would get such a kick out of how many things I do his way. Who knew he knew what he was talking about? Story 15. Moved away from my hometown for several years. Moved back with the plan to leave again in a few years. That was more than 17 years ago. I met my wonderful husband and stayed. He can't leave his job and earn what he does anywhere else. I dislike this town. Story 16. Infertility. I thought it was so rare and wouldn't likely affect me as my mother and my sister had no issues getting pregnant. Welp, I was wrong. Took nearly 3 years, a lot of pain, multiple losses, procedures, and money to get pregnant. Completely changed my life forever and how I view family building. Story 17. An alcoholic after leaving home at 18 due to my alcoholic dad, and 4 years later taking care of my older alcoholic sister after her husband, then our parents kicked her out due to her drinking, who was just an absolute trash bag to me and our younger sister. Almost 6 years sober now, but can't believe I let myself fall into that trap. Story 18. IV, heroin, meth, coke addict. Had amazing upbringing. Money was there for college if I went. Dropped out early grade 10. Was a depraved intimacy addict on meth coke. One bender years ago was awake for 6 or 7 days. Sitting inside a dense bush, covered in mud, watching adult content on my phone at 4 a.m. while covered in mud jerking off. Notice some lady jogging on the sidewalk coming towards me. I try to be silent, hope she just runs by and away without noticing me. Stops dead in her tracks. Sprints full clip to the other side of the street and out of sight. Probably top 3 worst moments. The realization of being the batshit tweaker addict that I said I'd never be. Took another 5 years to get sober. Currently 14 months clean, and I work inside of a hospital's long-term rehabilitation facility. Story 19. I used to pretend that I was doing ballet as a kid, and in my teens I would watch ballet and then say how much I wished I'd done dance when I was little, because I would have loved to be a ballerina. Obviously, since I didn't start at age 2, I would never be a dancer. But I always liked to watch, even if I would never do it myself. My sibling was the theater kid of the family. I convinced myself I had horrible stage fright and could never step on a stage, mostly so I didn't step on their toes. They were the one who was going to be an actor. I didn't want anything to do with the spotlight. I'm now a soloist with a local studio, getting ready for my 3rd nutcracker after 5 years of ballet training and modern dance lessons. I'm working towards a theater degree and have put down solid roots in my community theater scene. I've also been an extra on several TV shows. Could never be me indeed. Story 20. Living abroad and fluent in a second language. Growing up, the only bilingual people I knew had grown up speaking one language at home and another at school. I didn't know you could really become fluent as an adult. And the only people I knew who had been abroad were in the military. Also, I couldn't name any women with a college degree. I was an adult when I realized the librarian must have gone to college. Story 21. It just feels the same as when you are thin, except it's hard to put my socks on. Story 22. Happy with a loving family. I was so sure my whole young life I would never get married. I'd end up marrying a gay man who would leave me or I'd have to settle. I basically was convinced no one could love me. Happy to say I was very wrong about that. Story 23. Being in an abusive relationship, learning that it might be abusive yet staying, learning that it likely was abusive yet staying, learning that it probably was abusive yet staying, and realizing that it was definitely abusive yet staying. Leaving said relationship because I genuinely believed he was going to eliminate me, but trying to get him help so that he could get better, so that maybe one day we could get back together. That was a special kind of delusion. Lord, I was so desperate and mind-effed. Story 24. A lot of these are negative, but I'll put forward my happier one. I never thought I'd have the happy and comfortable life I do. I set my bar low in my early life and have far surpassed my hopes for myself. I even married the guy I had crushed on in high school. I saw happy and stable couples and really didn't see that for myself. Happy to say I'm boring and healthy and happy. Story 25. First day of physics class in an engineering-focused college. Professor, look to your right and your left. 2 of the 3 of you will not be here in 4 years of graduation. Me, I feel bad for those 2 guys, wonder where they'll be. Me 9 months later, yep, I'm one of the 2. Off to get a history degree somewhere else. Story 26. Quitting a job before having something else lined up. I am 30 and have been working since 18 and have always secured something else before leaving a job. But I am so unbelievably mentally checked out at this current place that I'm on the verge of screwing myself. Story 27. Stopping to look into the house rent prices in estate agent windows. Also in an irony, wearing what is considered women's clothing, skirts, dresses, as a dude. I guess it took me a bit of time to realize I was wrong to understand my faith as prohibiting that. To other dudes, don't knock it. A skirt dress is a good way to stay cool in summer and looks good on most people if it fits. Story 28. In an abusive relationship where he cheated on me repeatedly and blatantly, and I stayed for 9 years. Never, ever, ever did I think I would put up with it for even one day. I did, and it's the biggest mistake of my life. Years later, and I'm still recovering emotionally and financially. Story 29. Growing up, I thought I wasn't smart enough for college. Figured I'd be a janitor or something. It took the military to show me what I was actually capable of. Now I'm an engineer in a highly desired position. Lots of work and lots of self-doubt along the way, but kept trying and it paid off. Story 30. I work for the government in a job where I help people. I wanted to get an MBA and come in and boss people around. I wanted to work in lean concepts and tell companies where people could be let go. I really wanted to just be a boss meanie, but in the corporate way. So thankful I changed. I was a bitter kid. Story 31. I think most newer technology is all flash and no substance. It's designed to break, and the features they add to make it flashy that are mostly unnecessary and useless are the reason it breaks. Home appliances are the best example of this. I was a computer programming major in college before switching to the trades. I never thought I'd be the person shoot on new tech. Story 32. I grew up extremely religious. I was deep in the neo-catechumenal way since 6th grade or 7th grade. I genuinely thought I was going to become a nun. I ran this Catholic Tumblr blog that had over 10K followers, and I spent hours every week fighting anons in my DMs about anything from divorce to intimacy before marriage to substances, all things I'd never done and knew nothing about as a very sheltered teenager. But the most popular topic in my ass was about gay people, and I was giving out tickets to hell like I was Oprah. I get a lot of questions along the lines of, I think I'm gay, I'm so scared I'm going to hell. And my answer was always, well, you are, so go to confession and change ASAP. Well, now I'm 28 years old and very, very gay. I realized at 17, but it took years for me to log back into my now deactivated Tumblr. I was probably a senior in college when I did, and I cried for days after reading all the hatred I was spewing as a 13, 14-year-old. It's taken me a long time to forgive myself. I know I was brainwashed in a way. One of the first retreats I went to in the way was a weekend-long lecture about how gay people are an abomination. I was really influenced by my upbringing, but still, it breaks my heart to think about how many people I hurt. And internalized homophobia still gets to me sometimes. But I've been working on it for years, and I'm finally happy to be me. Story 33. When I was a teenager, I was punk. Fudge the system, hell yeah. I spat on the corporate wage slaves and suburbanites. My worst fear was a white picket fence and a golden retriever. Now I'm happily married with the sweetest golden snoring away while I watch TV on the couch. And we just bought a house in a suburb with my corporate wages, albeit without a fence. I'm halfway between what happened and how did I get so lucky. Story 34. A runner. I still don't consider myself a runner. I always disliked running. Thought people who run mile after mile after mile disliked themselves and enjoyed suffering. Well, I still think that. I decided last year that this year I would do a Spartan Ultra 50K. IMO Spartan races aren't really running. You have to run to get to the next obstacle. It's not running just to run. To prepare for the race, I had to run. At age 50, I racked up more running miles this year than my previous 49 years combined. I would catch myself in disbelief as I told my wife I was going out for a quick 8-mile run. Like, did I really just say that? Story 35. When I was a stagehand in my 20s, I saw the middle-aged fat jerk still acting like kids and said, fudge that, never me. Well, one day I looked in the mirror and saw one of them staring back at me. I turned it around, though, left that life, started working in education, lost weight, stopped wearing humorous t-shirts, dodged a big, fat, greasy bullet. Story 36. I could never give up cheese and meat and be vegan. I even had a bumper sticker in high school that said, eat meat, I kid you not. Welp, age 35. I watched Earthlings and went vegan the next day. Also, vegan cheese is amazing. I can finally eat pizza without pain now. Story 37. I was never going to be a nice parent with spoiled brats. I was going to rule my house, control my children, and show these lazy jerk moms how it's done. Then I had kids. Turns out, according to my grown kids, I am a nice mom and easily the most understanding of fudge-ups. Very chill, very forgiving. Very much not worried about other people's parenting at all. Most toothless tiger mom ever. Story 38. IV substances user. I was hella terrified of needles all my life and still freak out if any medical professional starts towards me to draw blood or try to start an IV. And I wasn't just terrified of needles. I was extremely judgmental of those nasty jerk needle junkies. We sold pills, and if I knew someone was a shooter, I wouldn't even let them use my bathroom because I didn't want them in there with their Hep C bloody needles in my bathroom. Life had been rough on me, to say the least. I lost my first son at 15 years old. Had him when I was 25 weeks pregnant. He lived for 7 days. Had a healthy baby girl at 18 years old, but due to a stepmother who has disliked me since she saw my face when I was 10 in an extremely corrupt DSS in our backwoods town, my daughter was taken out of my custody when she was about 15 months old. I was 4 months pregnant with my second son when she was taken. I jumped through every hoop DSS asked me to jump through. When my second son was born, they didn't take him, and shortly after having him, my court date was set for the judge to return custody of my daughter to me as well. Everything was working out, and my little family was so precious to me. I woke up on a 1/19/06 to a real-life nightmare that still plays in my head to this day. My 8-week-old son was cold, stiff, and very obviously beyond any sort of help to bring him back. I carried him around my house after I called 911, hoping by some miracle there was somehow something, anything I could do to get him warm so he would wake up and start breathing. But I knew there wasn't. When EMS first arrived, I handed him over and they checked him for a pulse, but there wasn't one. The EMS worker laid him down and I picked him back up. In my head at the time, it felt like this was too fudged up to be real life and it had to be a dream. And as long as I held him and kept him with me, then he would be fine when I woke up. But if I gave him to them cold, blue, and dead, then that meant it was real and he was still going to be dead no matter what. After his passing, my DSS worker says that I can't even have unsupervised visits with my daughter or even consider the idea of her coming home until his autopsy comes back in 6 to 9 months. The detective who came to the house the morning of his passing even contacted DSS and told them that there was nothing suspicious about his passing and that it was a textbook case of SIDS. They didn't care. I swear it felt like they were trying to see if they could push me over the edge, so I would just put a bullet in my head and wouldn't be in the way of them letting my stepmom adopt my daughter. They were literally trying to punish me on top of one of the worst things that I have ever experienced in my life when I had went above and beyond to prove myself to them. So I made a mistake that I still regret today, and I said fudge them and gave up trying to get her back and started getting high to try to numb the pain. I still had never considered shooting up, though, until I caught my husband with a needle in his arm, passed out. He was so fudge up, and I was mad as fudge, but deep down I wanted to know what the high felt like. It wasn't long at all until I found myself in the bathroom tying my arm off and feeling for a vein, with a rig full of Opana in the other hand. The first time I did an Opana shot, it was pure bliss. I didn't feel any pain. I didn't care about all the trauma and hurt that I lived with every day anymore. When I pushed the plunger on that rig, it all melted away. I spent the next 10 years in and out of jail, living in hotels, dealing with horrible withdrawals regularly. My veins quickly started getting tired of my daily abuse and blowing out. Sometimes I would sit for 5-6 hours, just sticking myself anywhere I thought might hit, crying and praying that I would see the flash of blood pull back that meant I was in a vein. Finally, I found myself in the ICU with endocarditis, an infection of the heart valves caused by IV substances use. I spent 6 weeks in the hospital. As soon as they discharged me, I went to the pharmacy and bought a bag of rigs and hit up my dealer. I was back in ICU 3 days later. Finally got out, did it all over again. Doctors telling me over and over again that my heart couldn't take it anymore, and they didn't understand how I was still alive then, that I was absolutely going to if I didn't stop. I had no plans to stop. I was okay with dying. I wanted to be with my babies. The hard part was seeing the hurt in my mama's face every time I would get put back in the hospital again. But she still came to see me every day, every time, but it just wasn't meant to end like that. And on July 26, 2016, I decided that it wasn't worth trading my life for a shot. It's almost been 10 years now, and I feel absolutely no urge to shoot up whatsoever. My daughter found me after she turned 18 and wasn't forbidden from contact with me by my stepmom. I have a 4-year-old grandson who stays with me, and life is good. My mom died of pancreatic cancer in 2021. She was so proud of me for turning my life around, and I continue to live my best life because I know she's watching over me, and I still make her proud every day. Story 39. Being 51, Lyme and sepsis survivor with breast cancer, lupus, PTSD from childhood physical abuse, depression, POTS, recovering from recent mastectomy surgery and pulmonary embolism from that, and then radiation treatments. 90 bedbound, still trying to raise a teenager and dependent on a husband of 17 years who punched me in the face 3 weeks after my total hysterectomy. My child was not home at the time. I filed a police report. Case was rejected by the county and city attorneys. Argued with me in the cancer center parking garage right before my first radiation treatment when I was already terrified and I had a courage worry stone in my pocket for the inner terror of facing radiation. Emotionally abuses me even on my sickest days. I contacted Adult Protective Services and they came and told me emotional abuse wasn't illegal. I have doctors, a psychiatrist, and a therapist who know all of this. During radiation treatment, I couldn't deal with being emotionally abused on my way to treatment anymore. I asked the cancer center social worker if there was help with transportation. She said only if I had Medicaid, which I don't. She said her door was always open, though, if I have a particularly difficult ride to treatment and need to talk? She then gave me a gift bag with fuzzy socks, a couple of lemon candies, a pre-filled out card that said, "You are strong." This was all in October, which was Breast Cancer Awareness Month and Domestic Violence Awareness Month. The Cancer Center had a huge sign in the lobby with both giant ribbons. I am truly trapped. I rely on him financially for my medical treatments, food, getting my medications, taking me to appointments. If I had money and a caregiver, he would be divorced yesterday. I am on this earth for my children, 16 and 28. My 28-year-old lives across the country. The rest of my family, siblings, mother, are also across the country, but they are the reason for the PTSD. I am in hell and there is no way out. I would never hurt myself because I would never scar my children. But I never thought in a million years this would be what would become of my life. Story 40. Negative depression. I always thought I had no reason to be teed and so I'd stay happy forever. Positive. Having a stable, well-paying job. I have been unsure about office jobs and, as a teen straight up, said I did not want one. I wanted to work with my hands, but here I am, working an office job and supporting my family. Story 41. Giving birth. Growing up, I always said I'd never have kids. I was terrified of giving birth. So many things can go wrong. Eventually, it became a maybe with the right person. Then I met my husband. He had always dreamt of being a dad. I had expectations that needed to be met by both of us. Financially stable, have a good amount in savings, not living paycheck to paycheck, those kinds of things. I also was still terrified of giving birth, so I needed to work on that. Now, 14 years later, we have a beautiful baby boy who just turned 10 months. Story 42. Being my husband's caregiver while doing home dialysis. I am not a blood person with seeing it or smell. We are going on 1.5 years. Never in my days would I think I would be sticking someone with a needle. Not my choice, but happy it's keeping hubby alive. Story 43. Abusive living situation. Frog pot warmed up only after I was isolated and feeling like I owed them. By the time I realized it was boiling, I'd been cooked for a while. Advice I give readily is to check the health of your various relationships every 6 months to try to reduce the odds of that pot getting too hot before you notice it. Story 44. I have a couple of those, unfortunately. My dad was always impatient and would snap at people pretty quickly. I never wanted to be that person, but lately I have been becoming more and more impatient and snapping more. I also never wanted to be a living for the weekend type of person, but I dislike working and only look forward to weekends now, even though I don't do anything on the weekends. Finally, I never wanted to be the person that stays in an unhappy, unhealthy relationship purely because I'm too afraid of being alone or too afraid of change. Story 45. Ending up in a mental hospital. I became so horribly depressed and was using denial to cope. From that, I developed delusional thinking and extreme paranoia, and then the panic attacks began. I never thought I'd end up in the loony bin, and I ended up spending Christmas there. December is just another month now. I think in general, my adult life has been full of disappointment in the areas of life that I was assured would be enjoyable and simple when I was much younger. I'm a stereotypical, unsuccessful millennial, degree and all. Story 46. I got fat. I've always been chubby but have been physically very active and strong. Compared to other women, I knew I was heavier but had more stamina and much more muscle mass. Fast forward a few years and some long COVID later, and my doctor just marked my digital chart with morbidly obese. I'm so mad at myself and ashamed as my previous judgment of others, even though I kept my negative opinions about fat people to myself. Story 47. Becoming disabled. I never had a healthy body growing up. I was sick all the time and was antibiotics most of the year until I was 20, but I never thought it would get this bad. I went from being headhunted and making 100 K as an artist to on disability benefits and living with my mom in less than 5 years. I've been applying for jobs for a year now that my health is kind of better, but I need it to be from home full time. It sucks. Story 48. Losing myself and not knowing what I want and who I am. I was always someone who knew what she wanted, who she wanted to be. In the past 5 years, I feel like I've just been floating and going with the flow and don't recognize myself. I see a boring, mundane homebody who is simply lost. Story 49. I'm happy. I was at various levels of depression and intense anxiety as long as I could remember. I couldn't imagine feeling any other way. I sort of assumed it would eventually get bad enough that I would just eliminate myself. Even with medication, things were never quite right. Found a job that makes me feel fulfilled, worked hard to make my marriage healthy, had a long-awaited baby, achieved financial stability. I still have hard days, but I look forward to getting up in the morning. Story 50. I had a very nice picture of myself in my mind back when I was younger. As I got to be a teenager and the trauma started really taking its toll, I lost that picture and had a more simple vision. Myself as a housewife baking pies and letting them cool on the windowsill. I just wanted to be loved and cherished, to feel safe and comfortable in my own home, and to bake treats for the person I love, whoever that might be. I started feeling like it was a lost cause because the boyfriend I had at the time told me no one would ever want me, and I believed him. I met my husband a few years later. I get to bake bread and cookies whenever I want. The best part is I have a husband to enjoy those treats and 2 sons. Every day is love and comfort and appreciation in our house. Never thought that'd be me, and then it was. Story 51. Male violation victim. I went to a party. No one should go to a party expecting to get violation, but men never have their guard up. Happened to me. My ex-girlfriend defended the rapist because he was her friend and he is a free man. The law will catch up with him. Story 52. A lot of these are negative, so I'll bring something positive. I grew up pretty poor in a mobile home out in the boonies. I started babysitting when I was about 12 to start paying my way through life. I put myself through college and have just worked my jerk off since then, often at multiple jobs at a time so I could live, but also enjoy life, like go out to eat and travel while I'm still youngish. I then went into public service, so I kind of just accepted that I would always be poor. But my hard work paid off, along with a little luck in a global pandemic that forced me to stay inside and save money. And I became a homeowner 5 years ago. As much I never even thought that would happen. To top things off, this summer my husband and I bought another house. It is nicer than anything I ever would have imagined in my wildest dreams. One day, a couple of months ago, I walked out of my shiny new kitchen onto my rooftop deck and was like, "Babe, are we bougie?" It's shocking, but also amazing to think I went from sharing a bunk bed with my 2 brothers as a kid to now having 3 bedrooms for just me and my partner to ourselves. It's insane, but I love it. Story 53. For a positive one, I get to live in a city with a job and lifestyle and pay that I could never have imagined. More than that, I've got a ton of friends and I'm welcomed and happy. Life is good in a way I never thought it would be. Not perfect, to be sure, but better than expected in nearly every metric. Story 54. Being in an abusive relationship. Growing up, I always saw them on TV and thought, how could they let that happen to themselves? And then it happened. It's insidious, and when you've never been there personally, it just creeps up on you until you're fudge in it and you realize, oh, that's how it happens. Story 55. Being in a monogamous relationship again. LOL, turns out part of why I preferred polyam is not just because I am naturally inclined towards it, but also because of trauma from an abusive relationship. After being abused, monogamy seems so scary and controlling, but it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be controlling and toxic and possessive. It was hard for me to trust that, though. Story 56. Being a girly girl. As a child, I was such a tomboy and disliked the color pink. But growing up, I slowly realized that it was all because of the internet demonizing femininity and putting the pressure on me to be cool. These days, my room is covered in everything pink. I adore wearing dresses, and I'm studying to be a fashion designer, all of my designs being very girly. I fudge love being a woman. Story 57. Used to think the military were all the useless dumbass who were no good for studying and too lazy for work. Met a soldier at 38, ended up marrying him, and it's the happiest I've ever been. I even shoot now, and we are not from a country where firearms are common. Story 58. Teen pregnancy. As a teen, I never wanted kids. I was a mother at 16. I now have 12 kids. JK, I have 2. I waited 17 years before I had another. I can't believe I'm 43 and my daughter will be 30 in a short blink of time. She makes me face my mortality more than my own age. Story 59. Being a singer in a band. I've loved playing music and been a guitarist drummer for various bands since my teen years, mid-30s now, but I've never thought I would be able to be a singer. But in my latest band, I'm setting up with some friends. I decided FK it, and I'm going to take singing lessons, and we're all going to share vocal duties. Story 60. It'd never be the single friend, the one that everyone that's married quietly pities because you're still showing up to everything alone. But here I am, closing in on 40 and single as a $1 bill. After my last long-term relationship ended during COVID, I went to therapy and broke everything down, healed, and built myself back up. But I've almost built this fortress around myself, and I'm scared I've made it impenetrable. For the most part, I'm pretty happy, but there are definitely lonely nights, and I wonder if it'll be this way forever. Story 61. The parent who gets maxed out and screams at their kids. I always feel 100 gutted right after and apologize to them. Trying to raise one child with alphabet soup, ADHD, DMDD, ASD, conduct disorder, possible schizoaffective disorder, and another who feeds off his rage has me feeling like a failure most days. Story 62. My child growing up, meeting a girl and losing his mind, now isolated from all family and any female friends or acquaintances. I can assure you, I've had people call me and tell me horror stories of how she treats him even in public. So gut-wrenchingly sad. Story 63. I learned the hard way to never say I wouldn't do something because then the fates perk right up and do everything they can to humble me. The example that I always think of first is, I was a FedEx delivery driver, so I made good money. It was hard work and I, a woman, had an industrial heavy route. One evening around Christmas, I was making my last pickups before I headed back in and saw a Christmas tree lot. It was raining and cold and the people working there looked absolutely miserable. And I said out loud to myself, I'm glad that's not me. Well, I got injured lifting something wrong, and even though workman's comp was good, I couldn't cover all my bills. So my dad told me, the tree lot is hiring. So yeah, I worked as the cashier in the cold at a tree lot the next year. Story 64. Listening to EDM, going to raves, shows, loving festivals, etc. Always disliked the EDM it heard, house, and looked down my nose at it as a bit of a music snob. Agreed to attend a bass show with a friend, was at Lightning in a bottle 4 months later and loving it. Been a couple years, but this scene has changed and improved my life in more ways than I could possibly express. Still can't stand house though. Story 65. Knowing what it feels like to experience joy, not having wanting to as my default state of being. These are the two most important ones. I've been through a lot in my life and done a lot throughout my life, but the only thing I find totally unbelievable is that my mental health is on the mend and has been on a positive trend for years now. Of course, there are still times when I'm unhappy. I even have depressive episodes every once in a while, but I haven't seriously considered eliminate myself in several years. I haven't self-harmed in almost a decade. I have been in eating disorder recovery for a decade. I didn't think I'd live to be 26, let alone being alive and actually wanting to be here and continue. I thought I was broken in an unfixable way. I thought happiness was something my brain just wasn't capable of. Yet here I am, 26, alive, with a desire to live. In a headspace such that I would willingly fight to stay alive. I know what joy means. I know what self-love is. I know who I am without all the weight of the mental illness I didn't think would ever be possible to overcome. I am still medicated and probably will be forever, but that is a small price to pay for being able to know and love myself. Story 66. Well, my wife is in the next room working on her MBA, and I'm here on Reddit bragging about how good-looking she is. She really is. I mean, she's smart and funny and playful and smells darn good, but right now I'm just bragging about hotness. Story 67. I went around my state talking about caring for yourself because it wasn't a matter of if, but when you get injured and have to keep going. Usually happens to people 10 years and around or after 28. Well, I got injured at 32, broke both legs and almost chaptered out of the army. You think you're invincible and can conquer a mountain until you physically can't. I am now one of those statistics, but I am also one of the one that came back, was told I would most likely never run again and be in severe chronic pain for the rest of my life. I did the physical therapy, stretches, and ran a half marathon a year after my injury. If anybody's a doctor here, I got a pylon fracture and heel fracture in my other foot. It was considered a severe injury after a 30-foot fall. Compression fracture to my L1 as well. So all in all, I think I did pretty well. Thanks to the orthopedic surgeon that saved my legs and the dozen physical therapy techs that helped me as well. Story 68. All of these are so negative. If you asked younger me in my late teens and early 20s when I was a substances addict, I would have said having kids and running a business would never happen. I was supposed to die bitter and alone and young, but I have a wife, 2 kids, and have my own business. Story 69. Becoming a widower at 44. I beat cancer twice and my wife lost her fight within a year. We have an almost 12-year-old daughter, and I wish every day that she got her mom over me. Not because I don't love her or am not capable of raising her, but her mom was such an incredible person. Story 70. I see a lot of negative comments here, so here's a positive one. Being loved. I'm a gay man and I have acne inversa. Not sure if it is also called like that in English. I was disgusted by my own body, and a lot of people always assume that the worst when they see the scars, e.g., that I don't about hygiene or that I have an STD because it is mostly around my genital area. But it doesn't matter how much you take care of yourself if you suffer from acne inversa. It will happen, and it most likely will leave you some scars. Some more prominent, some less visible. I had a really low self-esteem before I met my current boyfriend, and he just accepted me the way I am. I still can't believe it, but I'm more happy than I have ever been in my life. Story 71. When I was a teenager, despite the fact that I was a self-professed nerd, I never allowed myself to get into D&D because I thought that's way too nerdy, even for me. At the age of 37, I was listening to my friends talk about their campaign, and it sounded really cool, so I said I wanted to try it. Now, me and my Dragonborn wizard are tearing up shoot in the frozen North lol. Story 72. I never thought I'd end up in a relationship where I felt safe. I have loads of CPTSD and trauma due to all sorts of abuse. Then I met a military guy at an event, had one date before he was deployed, moved in with him right after he got back, where I was able to start healing, got engaged, and now we are planning on getting married late February, early March next year. Story 73. Breaking my teeth. Back when I was 15, my high school PE class went to the rink for some skating. While we were there, I asked my teacher about his strange-looking teeth, and he explained that he had broken his teeth and has teeth caps. I then thought to myself, that sounds painful. I hope that never happens to me. Not 30 minutes later, I face planted on the ice and broke my 2 front teeth clean in half. My dad brought me to the dentist, where the receptionist cringed and told us to go to the ER instead. By the end of the day, I also had teeth caps. Story 74. Married to a doctor and homeowner before 30 info. The only reason I am a homeowner is because I married a woman from a rich family. I immediately benefited from her privilege, and I totally recognize that. I am from a low-class family in rural Iowa. I have 6 siblings and grew up in an abusive home, and all my siblings struggled with substances. My substances of choice was food. I hit 260 in college. I was horrible with money, had horrible self-esteem, raging undiagnosed ADHD, so I struggled with all schooling, flunked out of college. I had really nothing going for me. Met my wife right as she was graduating with her doctorate. I struggled a lot in our early relationship. I felt like a leech because her life was so different compared to mine. Her parents bought her a house to live in during college med school. They never held money or resources over her head. She never worried about finances. But she really taught me what is possible when you have a safe home, unconditional love and support. She pushed me to pursue certifications instead of going back to school. She knew how much I struggled, and I became a network specialist, now an engineer. We were married in 2023 and currently trying to have a baby. Story 75. Being a mom, I was so sure I'd never have kids. Now I have a 5-year-old daughter and 3-year-old son, a loving husband, a beautiful 3-bedroom house on the river, and my heart is so full and happy. If I told my 20-year-old self any of this, she'd laugh in my face and down a bottle of Jim Beam from the anxiety and stress from just thinking about it. Story 76. Got scammed when I was looking for a job. It cost me about $4K. It felt so real, and I thought I'd always be able to see the scam because most other scams are quite terrible and/or predictable. This felt legit, but just a bit too good to be true. Just enough for me to think I should give it a shot. Story 77. Ended up in an abusive marriage. Assumed it would be obvious if a man was abusive. Like in movies, it's all wonderful for 6 months until he punches you right in the face. I didn't know that abusers can play the long game. Mine took 3 years before I started seeing bad behavior. But even then, he never punched me in the face. It was very subtle at first. I was the slowly boiled frog. Story 78. I thought I would have no one in my corner or in my support system ever. I grew up in a very toxic, abusive family, and I was usually an afterthought if I was thought of. Heck, until yesterday, I thought it was normal to give gifts to your guests for parties or gatherings meant for you. I married the man I can truly trust and depend on yesterday, and the majority of my found family were there in person and virtually. Story 79. I always thought stay-at-home moms were stupid for allowing a spouse to take care of them. Woman having no career then being forced to uphold finances the moment a spouse left or decided to. Became me, stay-at-home mom, due to daycare costing as much as our mortgage. We only have one. 3 years later, he had planned to divorce me with his parents. He asked me to go over to their house and review the papers and sign. Thank God I did an emergency therapy appointment. Left therapy, got a job with a friend, got back to my house, and he was ready to go to his parents. I told him no, I'd pay for a lawyer and speak to my family before signing shoot. He can wait till then. Stopped talking to him, became roommates in the house we used to call home. Got my head out of my jerk really quick. No, I love yours. No cuddling. I became cold and a ghost the moment I stepped out of that car that day. Went back to work 2 days later. My oldest brother helped me take care for my son. My husband would try to talk to me, and all I'd say is it's best if we wait for the lawyers. 2 weeks, and he asked me to take him back. He had made a mistake. Told him I'd only stay if he did therapy. Now I'm still saving in case I have to emergency get out with my son, while still trying to save a marriage. I used to make 26 an hour at a bank as a fraud inspector at age 21. Now I work for a security monitoring company and make 17 per hour. I should have never chased the picket fence house and kid's dream. All I learned is trust should never be given to anyone. Trust is an illusion best to keep to yourself. Story 80. Home ownership. I was evicted 3 times growing up. In college, I once spent 6 weeks sleeping on people's floors. When I filed for divorce, my ex-H told me that I'd never own a hole without him. I had a medical bankruptcy in my 40s. I was always just grateful that I could pay rent and keep utilities on. It still blows my mind away that I turn the key and enter a home I own. Story 81. When we finally agreed to start trying, I was 4 days pregnant and didn't know it yet. Now we have a beautiful, his absolute twin, 2-year-old daughter, and we're going to start trying for 2 in a few months, BC. Why not at this point? She's my bestie and the best thing to ever come into our lives. Story 82. Watching Game of Thrones after doing everything in my power to avoid watching it, despite the praise from everyone around me. I ain't with that medieval nerd shoot until I was extremely bored one day and started watching from beginning on demand. I soon became one of those people who randomly note that winter is coming. Story 83. Substances addiction. I'm sober now, but no one realizes just how hard it is to stop. You want to stop so badly, but you just fudge can't, and it's eliminate you, especially in my case because I had a lot on the line. I was able to get into treatment and get sober, but substances addiction is its own form of hell. It consumes you in your entire life. You think you're in control, but you're not. You do things you never would have done before. It slowly destroys you. Fudge, I'm so glad I was able to get sober. Not everyone is so lucky. Story 84. The person who brought their pet to family functions. I always thought it was annoying how people wouldn't just leave their dogs at home. Once I moved out, I realized that's the only time my family really gets to see my 18-year-old parrot now. Plus, she loves the socialization. Story 85. Never thought I'd gain weight like I have. I've always been naturally petite, but started insomnia medication a few years back, and now I'm the heaviest I've ever been. Bordering overweight ATM. I've been trying really hard to lose it, but not much is working. Could also be because I have never had to worry about losing weight and have no idea what I'm doing. Story 86. Being happy in life. Chances were slim. Got super lucky with career and relationships in my mid-20s after being depressed all my life with undiagnosed ADHD. Things are far from perfect, but I never expected any of the good things I have in life right now. Hell, I didn't think I'd live this long. Story 87. Getting a really bad sunburn. Used Factor 50 religiously most of my life. Felt bad for people I saw who looked like they forgot sun cream or fell asleep in the sun when visiting hot tropical places. Then I forgot to reapply after swimming one day, turned tomato red, and now see how easily it can happen. Story 88. When I was in 8th grade, my teacher had us write a letter to ourselves as a senior in high school, and he mailed them to us when we became seniors. It was funny opening mine, but one of the things I wrote to myself was, I hope you're not on substances. This was during the DARE era. Well, I was absolutely doing a ton of party substances. Oops. Story 89. An adult without direction. I had intense and obsessive passions as a kid-teen and thought it would always be that way. I didn't follow the dream, and now I'm in my mid-20s floundering, going to grad school and following through on a half-assed plan, but there's no passion or drive there. I thought if I survived this long, I'd for sure be that hyper-passionate about whatever I did with my life. Then I thought when I got sober, I'd rediscovered that side of myself because I wouldn't be numbing everything. Turns out the closest I can get to that place as an adult is being under the influence of something. IDK. Why I thought sobriety would be the game changer considering I started using it like 14 LMAO. Story 90. Get divorced. I thought we were going to make it till we got old, but a few years into it, we realized we weren't heading the same direction in life. So rather than try to make something that wasn't their work, we decided to call it before we resented each other. We're still friends, and we're both in happy relationships. Story 91. I'm the IT department at my work. Not literally, I'm actually the legal department, but I do all the IT other than someone set up our domain controller probably 15 years ago, and I bring in someone for stuff. Like we needed a new card key panel installed. I figured out the software though. I only do it BC, otherwise it won't get done. I dislike it. I'm not techie. I don't care about tech, and I'm actually a bit of a Luddite in my personal life. Thank God for YouTube instructional. Story 92. Peeping out of my blinds and watching the neighbors. They can't see me. I haven't gotten to that point yet. I'm also resisting the urge to tell people to stay off my lawn, though I haven't told anyone yet, but there is this one neighbor. I may joke about these things to friends, but sadly they're true. I'm 58. Story 93. I always thought I would be married with kids. All my aunts and uncles were. Distant cousins were married. I never wanted to be a spinster with cats. Well, I have never been married and can't imagine living with another person. I'm also considering another cat, so never say never. Story 94. Having a close family member die in a mass shooting, definitely something you'd never expect to happen, but even in the smallest U.S. towns, it really can happen at any time. Lost my little sister in a mass shooting, and I still can't believe it happened. Story 95. Credit card debt. It took leaving a job without another lined up, and for me to have to put my basic necessities on credit card to be down this rabbit hole. It feels impossible, especially since my credit score has never been lower, and I still don't have a job. I feel like I'm drowning, and it's not even frivolous expenses. I just want to live, not survive. Story 96. Chronic pain and needing a cane. Story 97. 1. When I was young, I swore I would always try to keep up with trends and be interested in youth culture. This is probably hampered by the acceleration of the internet, but now I find myself wanting to know less about trends. 2. Why would anyone ever want AI in their toothbrush or need an app for their teeth? It was me. I splurged on a toothbrush and I love it. I'm sorry. The AI still isn't important to me, but I love this new toothbrush and it is a significant upgrade. It was also 50 off, so returning to medical school, dropped out at 19 after 3 years, swore to never go back. I would make my own happiness outside of my family's approval. I found that happiness, and now I want to go back for myself. Story 98. You know that meme or magnet where this girl is looking at a math board and says, fudge this shoot. I'm going to be a stripper. I began stripping because my corporate day job paid me so poorly that I literally became homeless because I couldn't afford a studio apartment in my city, and during COVID, couldn't find any sort of roommate after my housing fell through. So I became a stripper, and it objectively changed my life for the better. Escaped homelessness, bought a car, began to pay out of pocket for a college education, and was able to be so financially secure I could afford to explore other jobs and doubled my day job income by landing a WFH tech gig with my newfound resources and knowledge. Story 99. Caught an incurable STI from staying in an abusive relationship. He fudged his status results so I never saw it coming. I didn't realize I was in an abusive relationship until someone told me. I kind of just thought that was how we were, since every relationship is different. For anyone curious, I'm completely fine. What I have won't eliminate me, but it still sucks to have. Wouldn't wish it on anyone. Story 100. I was F21. And I married a 26-yo man. I turned 22 the following week. I was so confused for so many years, BC. I never understood the crazy reactions to things that I was never sure even happened. We'd be out and having fun, and once gone, he turned into an accusatory, insecure, jealous person. It went on for quite a while until I realized I had to remember everything I did or said when we'd go out. I threw it back in his face and never again believed anything he said about me. I regained my self-respect and put a plan into motion to get myself and children out. After finding out from the lawyer I hired that the cost was $250 an hour, that I went to my ex and said, can we have a decent, respectful divorce? BC, it's over and there's no sense being a Holmes. So we did. Sold the house. I rented a place and had the kids. Once I realized I could support myself and my 2 children, I was totally okay. I've had a great life after him. I never remarried. Story 101. A woman who will just let the gray hairs grow. I used to see middle-aged women whose gray hair was coming in or growing out and swear I would always just dye it right away when it was me. But now I have a few coming in right at the front, and I just don't have the mental energy to dye my hair over a few sparse grays, which do BTW stick out like a sore thumb, BC. I have dark brown hair, but I am finding it easy enough to just pretend I don't see them. Story 102. Fighter 26. Never imagined I'd be spiked. We were out driving around when my friend picked up 4 shorties at Kahawa Sukari. Am always against going out with more women than the guys since most times form Huzama. We went drinking, and against my judgment, we ended up at mines. My friend blacked out first, and I was startled, because he never blacks out. I tried to drag him, but he didn't flinch. I immediately knew something was wrong, and rushed to my room to call my brother. He didn't pick up, and I ended up passing out on the floor. Let me tell you, Mina, they looted everything, my iPhone, work laptop, even my suits. Never trust his fam. I had it coming. Never thought it could be me, though. Story 103. Liked this one girl years ago. We became acquainted after she told me her friend liked me. Her friend was acting weird and hiding, and I stared in confusion. I courted her friend just so I could hang out with this girl. We spent most of the time talking about stuff and discussing how to get with her friend. Thought it would be something out of a story if I started dating her instead of her friend, like a plot of some romance movie. Could never be me until her friend said she stopped liking me. Me and this girl stayed friends, and in the end, we got together. We broke up. And I'd never admit this to my girlfriends, but she still holds a place in my heart because she wasn't my first girlfriend, but she was my first love. Story 104. Random kid toys and crap in the yard. I thought, wow, how gross and trashy. I could never be that person. How hard is it to just get rid of things? Well, here I am being that trashy parent. Every minute is a fight to get home from work, make dinner, get the kids to bed, and when I do have time, I just can't summon the energy to do it. There's always more things. Story 105. It's cheesy, but finding someone I love. My emotions are a bit weird, and for a very long time, I never felt anything like it towards another person. Then I met my now husband. He was the first and only person that ever gave me that feeling, even from early on. And he's such an important part of my life now. I honestly don't think I'd still be here if it wasn't for him. Story 106. Being that person who plays a sport every weekend and looks forward to it and turns down late nights for it, I used to think I could never not be a party person and thought people who spent their weekends doing sober sports were so lame. I'm them now. I'm lame, and it's actually very cool. Story 107. I was groomed and abused by a high school teacher. I remember one time looking over at another student-adult friendship at our school and thinking, oh, that's wrong. It looks like he's grooming him. Now I wonder how many of my classmates saw what was happening to me and could see what I did not. Story 108. I used to look at the photos attached to stories in magazines about women, girls with eating disorders, and couldn't fathom why anyone would do that to themselves. I was so shocked at how skinny they looked and thought it was stupid. 10 years later, I was stuck in the middle of a restrictive eating disorder, wearing children's clothes at 23 and panicking whenever food touched my lips. Story 109. I could never be a vegetarian. I like bacon too much. Now 3-ish years at the vegan end of vegetarian, I love to party so much and drink and stay up all night. 12 years completely sober. I love vaping so much I couldn't live without it. Vape-free since July, it'll never get old and boring. But here we are, haha Jake, I love my sober vegetarian life. Story 110. Hello, I remember being around 14 or 15 when the respiratory specialist told me to take my health more seriously or I could end up with a lung transplant. He said it was rare but possible. His delivery was shocking though. He was actually a stand-in for my usual doctor who I normally liked. Teenage me was like, psh, this guy's a jerk and awfully dramatic. Turned my nose up at him and left. I'm 32 years old and 1 year post-double lung transplant. Listen to the doctor, kids. Story 111. I worked in IT for years and considered myself quite savvy, and yet I got scammed by some people from China over the internet. I'm still kicking myself because, in hindsight, I should have taken out postal insurance on the item I was selling, given the obvious risk. Story 112. Being a parent used to baffle me. Why would you do this thing that eats up all your time and money, restricts almost every aspect of your life, and there are no discernible benefits? I now have 3, would happily have more, and they're the absolute best. Story 113. Have a mom pouch. I used to be slim, exercised loads, and looked after my body because I disliked the way my mom's pouch stuck out and how she never looked after herself. Now, due to a medical condition, I can't exercise as much and have gone up 2 dress sizes. FML. Story 114. When I was young, I promised myself I would never become like my father. I would be there for my kids. When I was 16, I decided that my goal in life was to take care of my family. I didn't have one at the time, but felt that it was a good life goal. Now I'm old, and my kids live with their mother about 3,000 miles away. We're friendly and talk to each other now and again, but I had very little opportunity with them. I can barely take care of myself. I suffer from mental illness. I love my family, even my ex-wife, very much. I just wish I was enough to stay with them. At least I was never abusive like my father. Story 115. When I was 13 or 14, I watched a documentary about eating disorders and told my mom, I will never stop eating just to lose weight. That's silly. Yet just 2 years later, I developed anorexia. Now at 32, I'm still struggling and have found myself at passing's door in the hospital more than once. Story 116. When I was a kid, I used to hear my dad berate and insult my mom over unimportant stuff and kept thinking, I'll never marry a man who talks to me like that. And yet somehow I did. He kept that side hidden until we were married, but I did eventually get out. I still don't know how my